Greetings, everyone. This is Ehav Ever for the Chronicles of Ehav Ever. And today I'm going to be dealing with an interesting topic of, is it true that religion is the cause of most or all of human suffering? Now, when considering this topic, of course, as always in the last few videos, I've been doing an outline to kind of show you what I'm going to be talking about in the video. So the first I'm going to be stating is the question itself. I'm going to be dealing with the question of what is also religion, and then I'm going to be dealing with what is the source of a religion, and who is responsible for human suffering, as well as what percentage of human suffering is due to non-religious sources. So the first part of the topic is religion and suffering. Now, one of the problems that comes up into this conversation, and the reason why I even came up with this as a video topic, is because I've seen videos sometimes, or even discussions where it's mostly been between atheists and mostly Christians for the most part, but sometimes other religions are brought into it. And the question that comes up is about human conflict. I once had a discussion with someone where they were telling me that most of human conflict is created by a religion. But in reality, I've actually seen no proof of that. Plus, I think there's some basic problems with the discussion to begin with. Because if we want to get down to the issue of what is suffering, I mean, if you look at the suffering between people, which you could say is human conflict, well, the roots of human suffering when it comes to conflict is usually because you have someone with one idea versus someone with a different idea. And essentially both people, are at odds with each other because of these ideas. So that this brings up the question, well, what is religion, for example? According to the dictionary, or dictionary.com, essentially a religion is something that involves belief and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially of a personal god or gods. Also, the word faith comes into the discussion when it comes to religion, as well as the concept of worship. So if you look at it, the basic idea within the Western concept is if you have a concept of belief, faith, and worship, then you have a religion. So then this begs the question, well, what is belief? And essentially, a belief is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. And it also is trust and faith or confidence in someone or something. So essentially, you could say that this deals with issues and areas where you don't have the ability to either prove out or logically, I guess you could say, either explain in some cases, or even deal with what are the evidences of the things that a person believes. It's one thing for somebody to say, for example, like as an example, I always use this joke where I don't believe that pineapples on a pizza make a pizza. But the only person who determined that is the person who created the pizza, because he has more say in the matter than I do. But then again, at some point, his word doesn't mean anything when people are making pizzas and they're putting pineapples on it. So essentially, the idea is a belief of mine. It's like something that I've accepted and I trust in, but there's no evidence to prove out what I'm saying. That brings us into the next area of what exactly is knowledge then. Basically, knowledge is considered in English to be an acquaintance with facts, truths, or principles as from study or investigation or general erudition, the fact of state of knowing, the perception of fact or truth, clear and certain mental apprehension. So essentially what we know is with knowledge, you're dealing with a completely different situation. You're dealing with things that have truths or facts or principles involved with it that deal with things that require investigation, where the faith and belief aspect, it doesn't require investigation. A person can believe in a religion and never have to investigate whether it's true or not. They could just simply say, well, I believe it. It sounds good. It was proposed to me in the right way. It got my emotions going. But a person doesn't have to deal with the fact of whether it's true or not. Which again could make anything a religion if you really wanted to. But again, for the sake of the conversation, we'll stick to what most people consider to be a valid religion. So this brings us to the next area of question of what is the source of religions. Now, this is where I differ from a lot of people in this area because I don't really hold by the concept of religion. I believe 100% that religion is man-made, and I'll explain to you why I say that. The first question you could say is, well, how do religions start? Well, often people, when they don't want to really deal with the issue, they dance around it and try to talk about like the issue of people's beliefs and things like that. But I said, like, no, let's get at what actually starts a religion. Well, the first thing is ideas and concepts. The first thing, if somebody has an idea or a concept, and then from there, they have a period of missionizing, spreading those ideas, which often comes with the idea of religion. And then you also have the point where through that missionizing, you have people who believe and have faith in something, especially with those religions that have more of like a clock attached to them, meaning that they have this doomsday or salvation scenario where essentially within a certain period of time, something must happen. And if it doesn't happen, people have to kind of reevaluate, try to come up with no reasons why it didn't happen, which is the faith and belief aspect. And then the last one is after that, that's when you can come up with religion. But here's the part that I notice that most people in this discussion do not want to even cover, especially those who have anti-religion, religious leanings. They never want to deal with the aspect of where does all this come from? How does it even start? And the issue is that it starts from one source, and that's people. Without people, there would be no ideas and concepts. There would be no missionizing or spreading of ideas. There would be no faith or belief, and there'd be no such thing as religion. It's because essentially people are the source of all these things. So then that begs the question, well, what is responsible for human suffering then? If you have these ideas and people say, well, it's because of religion. Again, the problem is that, well, where does religion start? It starts with people. So if people are the source of religion, that really means that religion is just an inanimate thing, or not even a thing. It's just an inanimate idea, and that people are the source of it. So if you want to get to the source of human suffering in relation to what people believe to be religion, is from people. So it's like saying if there are no people, no religion, no suffering. But then again, you could say, well, okay, even without religion, there's people. There's still like human conflict, human. That's where I'm basically saying that the source of human suffering in this relation between like interpersonal suffering, I guess you could say, from the cause of like people doing things to other people that causes suffering. Well, that's because of people. It's not because of an idea or a concept. It's because of the fact that people exist. I mean, it's like often what you see is people want to blame the concept or the idea rather than blaming the source of the idea or the concept. So it's like saying if any one of these people were to sit down and create some idea or concept, whether it's religion or religious or not, and it causes suffering, well, then they're the source of the suffering, not the idea. The idea starts because of them. It's not the idea floating out there, and then the idea goes out and convinces people to join this or join that or do that, do this. It's because of people. When we deal with like things like rhetoric. One of the arts of rhetoric is deals with direction or misdirection, also dealing with the reason in words, and also credibility, and also values. These things alone, without any kind of religion being attached to it, could cause suffering if people like market it the right way. And that's again because people are the source of these ideas, and thus people are the source of the type of suffering we're talking about. But often nobody wants to talk about this when it comes up. Most people want to say, I want to blame this particular religion for this suffering, instead of saying, well, the people created it, they're responsible, and if you stop people from creating things, therefore no religion. So if you could stop rhetoric, if you could stop reason, if you could stop values, and if you could stop credibility, then you could essentially, end human suffering for the most part because of the fact that people have no way of thinking about trying to create conflict. Again, this goes back to the issue that it's, I think, easier in some cases for people to blame the idea or the concept rather than blame the person, because then it basically calls out all of humans' activity in nature. And then what they want to have is this one central thing that they can blame, is pretend as if people believing in those things is just some silly thing, and that it's because of people's silliness that's where the human suffering comes from, rather than just simply saying that people could choose to make people suffer, or they could choose not to make people suffer, regardless of what they believe or what they do. And usually that comes from a knowledge base. When someone has a knowledge base, you could simply say that, I will choose not to oppress someone because of the fact that it doesn't benefit anything, because from my knowledge base, it's been proven that this kind of suffering doesn't lead anywhere. It leads them to destruction. But essentially, when people have decided that they want to oppress someone, it's all connected. I mean, you have a number of reasons why someone can choose to oppress someone. And it could be something that has nothing to do with religion whatsoever. It could be just based on words or based on actions. It could be based upon bad concepts. It could be based upon how a person's raised or how they're not raised. And that brings us into the next topic of, are there other sources of human suffering? I mean, one of the things that somebody brought up to me once was that they said, well, if you look at most wars are caused by religion. But then when you actually look at most wars are not caused by religion. They're caused by people who have their own interest at heart and are willing to make someone else suffer through their interest. So again, going back to the idea that people create concepts and ideas, they missionize them, they have faith and belief, and that's in a sense what creates religion. But is it possible that all of these, the same process created by people, could also lead to other things too? For example, instead of religion, let's say politics. Well, does politics cause human suffering? Oh, yes, it does. Well, let's replace politics with something else and say love. Do people who have ideas and concepts and missionize those ideas and have faith and belief cause suffer because of love, or because of things that they think that they're in love with, or people they feel that they're in love with who are not in love with them? Yeah, that happens too. Fear. Do people cause human suffering because of fear? I mean, with ideas and concepts and missionizing and faith and belief? Yes. nationalism. I mean, nationalism is another reason why some people, for example, suffer because of the fact that there's someone who creates these ideas, and the person who created them is the person to blame, but not the ideas and not the nationalism, because nationalism is just an idea. It's just a word, for example, I put on a presentation here, but it's not an actual physical thing that gets up and then starts like harassing people and beating people up or hurting people. Essentially, it's because of people. You mean sports. There's people even get violent at sports events. I mean, so people can be violent because of a sports event. They could definitely be violent because of anything else. And it's not that the football is out there hurting people and saying, "Hey, go riot right now," or "I'm going to, do such and such." It's because people are choosing to do that. There are people who get into fights about sports events, or people who riot after sports events just simply because that's what they want to do, and that's what they're willing to do to other people or other people's property. Taxes. There's been wars because of taxes. I mean, look at early American history. That had nothing to do with religion. That was all about taxes and government in some cases, and who has the right to like either do both. You can also look at like other sources of human suffering. Well, there's human suffering sometimes because of technology. I mean, there's people who create different types of technologies and industries that essentially cause human suffering. I mean, the weather can cause human suffering. I mean, even animals cause human suffering. I mean, look, animals don't have religion, and look what the damage they do to each other, do to people in some cases. If you're not in the right place, right time, and you don't have the right protection, you could really be hurt by an animal, and they even hurt each other, in a sense, even their own species in some cases. So these are other sources of human suffering that have nothing to do with religion. Is when you look at how people like get into almost like the mob mentality. There are people who choose to do those things, and whether it be, for like different reasons. I mean, there's people who choose to like, band together to, cause human suffering, and there's some people who choose to do it because it makes them feel more powerful. They bully. You even say that with online bullying right now. I mean, just because the internet's there, there's people who bully has nothing to do with religion. They just simply want to like, make someone else look weaker than them, and they're willing to do anything. I mean, even governments. You have parliaments in the world that people go and physically fight each other over like policies and like things like that. They're all getting paid to just go there and argue, but then some of them get into physical confrontations just over a disagreement that could have easily just been hashed out by just simply maybe like arm wrestling, or something like that. But they choose to go and physically confront and hurt and intimidate other people. I mean, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. There's people who get into fights over sports and pretty much go to war. I mean, there's people who like will like vandalize and loot because their favorite sports team won, and that has nothing to do with religion. I mean, the belief is that religion causes human suffering, again, the issue is that the core reason for suffering is because of people. I mean, all of these things are happening because of people. I mean, you have oil spills that happen in the ocean not because of religion, but because of people, because of industries, and because of situations where people decide, okay, my interests are greater than yours, or my ability to profit off a certain situation is more important. It doesn't matter what shortcuts I have to take into it. I mean, you even have situations where people just decided just because I want to, say that you don't have the rights to do A, B, C, and D, that, you will suffer now because of that. People in places of authority, and you also have like different factions that fight each other over concepts of territory, of nationalism, and things like that, like I said before. So again, all of these things have nothing to do with religion, but it's all because of people. So if there's suffering in the world, it's because it's essentially a source of an idea. It's because people created the idea. So to bring it all home, to conclude, we know that religions are ideas, concepts created by humans. We know religions are inanimate concepts and ideas. They're not even objects. We know that something that is inanimate can't cause suffering. So essentially, what we've come to the conclusion is that if there's suffering that comes from human beings, it's because of human beings. And if there's suffering due to ideas, it's because human beings created them. Because human beings create sports events and they decide to riot after those sports events if their team wins or loses. There are people who decide to say that you don't have the right to be a part of the society or to do A, B, C, and D. There are people who decide, okay, my sports team is like winning or losing. You're not on my side. This is, where I will, physically hurt you for that. And there are people who decide, okay, well, I'm demonstrating against this, you're demonstrating against that. Let's go and have conflict with each other. So thus we can conclude that the truth of the matter is that religion doesn't cause human suffering, people do.